Hello everyone, Pastor Hao here. My wife and I co-authored a book called GenerationS, and I wrote a chapter about how Christianity is one generation away from extinction. Sadly, everywhere I go globally, Europe, Korea, Asia, I see the same problems of the growing church. Just like Christianity, our churches are also just one generation away from extinction. Even in America, Australia, the average age of a typical church is 53 years old. I hear from pastors the same concerns that churches are losing their youth. Many churches are facing what I call the family church syndrome. You see, in a typical church, the majority of the congregation is made up of young families, the middle-aged, and seniors. So naturally, they also will have young children and teenagers. Now, as a result, there is a generation gap. We lose an entire generation who are in their 20s, yet these are typically the volunteers who power our churches. So organically, we already lose young adults and university students because they move to another city to study or to work. We will also lose some because they have all grown up and no longer follow their parents to church. You see, with this high attrition rate, churches need to intentionally focus on retaining and reaching the youth and young adults. So, how do we stop this attrition of youth? How do we fix this gap? The key is generations. God spoke to my wife, Leah, in the 1990s from Isaiah 58:12. And it says, "You shall raise up the foundations of many generations." And Heart of God Church is built upon this word, generations. She was the one who took the 19 ages in our church and she grew them to the thousands of young people today. So I will let the secret weapon of Heart of God Church share her revelation.
Now, when I talk about generations, it is not just next generation or my generation, but it is building many, many generations. When we say generations, people often think of succession. People think of the older person retiring or dying, and then the young person coming in to take over. Well, that is succession. But generations is not succession because succession is all about replacement. Generations are not replacements, but reinforcements. Generations is having many layers and levels of leaders at the same time. In our church so far, we have already built 7 generations of leaders, and each generation is only about 3 to 5 years apart. That's right, you didn't hear wrongly. It is not 40 years or even 20 years in between generations. Every generation is only about 3 to 5 years apart. Every few years in Heart of God Church, we start a new youth group as the preceding generation grows up. They come in at 13, 15, 17, and now they have grown up and are already in their 20s and 30s. And today they are pastors, leaders of hundreds, and heads of departments. Every generation gets to grow up and grow old together. And with each generation, there are hundreds of leaders and volunteers serving together and growing up together. And right now, we are already in our 7th generation. That is how we ensure longevity, renewal, and an endless pipeline of ignited youths, volunteers, and leaders coming through. Hundreds of youths from every generation deployed as reinforcements to serve God in His house. When we intentionally focus on building the youths and young adults, our churches not only grow bigger, but they grow younger and stronger. And these reinforcements will come alongside you, and your legacy and mission will continue.
How do you build generations in your church? As Pastor Leah always says, empower the youth. Don't entertain them. We can never out-Hollywood the world. When we empower the youth, they will surprise us by how they will rise up and take responsibility. They will lead and build the church. So don't try to impress the young people. Another of her mantra is do the important, not the impressive. The youth are looking for what is real, for true relationships, and for a sense of belonging. That is what's important, and our churches can provide all these. So how do we empower youth? It's not rocket science. By inviting, including, and involving them. In this way, when the youth are engaged, meaning involved, included, they will stay because they have caught the vision and the responsibility to build the church. Not only will they stay, they will reach out to other youths. And that's how we can stop the attrition. And you will also have layers and levels of leaders, a pipeline of volunteers, so you can stop the family church syndrome and bridge that generation gap. You will be strong and have a deep bench. You know, pastors, once we break out of this pressure to entertain or to impress, we don't have to stress. We don't need big budgets or big production or even big names. We don't need to worry that you are too old. I mean, look at me. I'm not that young. The first 10 years of How to God Church, we had just a guitar, an overhead projector, if you even know what that is. We didn't even have fancy lights or screens. We just had the presence of God. We are just ordinary pastors. But the youth, they encountered God. And this is what happened in How to God Church. We hope this video inspires you to see what is possible when you do the important, empower the youth, and build generations.
Hearts are burning. Destroy